The bowl opens, the dry locks split apart, and inside that soft white fiber we have been trained to imagine whenever someone says the word cotton. But here's the strange thing. The color in most cotton products does not come from the cotton plant. It comes later, much later, after harvest, after ginning, after spinning, after the fiber has already entered the industrial middle of the textile supply chain. That is where the color gets added. And that process requires water, chemistry, energy, equipment, and wastewater treatment. For more than a century, the textile industry has largely accepted that arrangement as normal. Grow white fiber, add color later, but what if that assumption was wrong? What if part of the coloring process could happen before the cotton ever leaves the field? Welcome back to Agri-Written. I'm Vince Seal, and today we're looking at one of the strangest biotechnology projects most people have never heard of. Because this is not really a story about pink cotton. It is a story about whether a plant can take over part of an industrial process. And if it can, what else might be true about agriculture and what can we do in the future? Most people think cotton and color are the same thing. They are not. Modern cotton and modern color live in different industries. Farmers grow fiber, factories create color. White cotton became dominant because white is flexible. A bale of white cotton can become almost anything. Black shirts, blue jeans, green towels, red jackets. The color decision can be postponed until much later. That flexibility is incredibly valuable. The entire textile industry was built around it. But there is a trade-off. Color has to be manufactured. At its simplest, dyeing is the process of attaching color to fiber and making sure that color stays there. It takes water, it takes energy, it takes chemistry, and it takes equipment. And it creates wastewater that has to be managed properly, which raises an interesting question. What if the cotton plant arrived with the color already built in? The first surprise in this story is that colored cotton is actually not new. Humans have grown naturally colored cotton for centuries. Brown cotton, tan cotton, rust-colored cotton, even green cotton. Long before industrial dye houses ever existed, people were making textiles from cotton that already contained color. So if colored cotton existed, why didn't it take over the industry? Well, that's because modern textile manufacturing doesn't reward interesting. It rewards predictable. A spinning mill does not buy cotton because it has a great story. It buys cotton because it behaves the same way every time. And that is where naturally colored cotton struggled. The color was appealing. The environmental story was appealing. But the fiber often came with trade-offs. Sometimes shorter, sometimes weaker, sometimes less consistent. It was lower yielding. The problem wasn't creating that color. Nature had already done that. The problem was creating color without sacrificing everything else the industry wanted. Could you keep the color and keep the fiber elite? The strongest proof that this idea might actually work arrived in 2023. Researchers published a project that became known as pink cotton candy. The name sounds playful. The science behind it was not. Here's the simple version. Researchers borrowed a color-making system from another plant and taught cotton fibers to use it. Not in the leaves, not in the stems, inside that fiber itself. Most people think of cotton fiber as a tiny thread. It isn't. Every cotton fiber begins as a single cell, one cell. That cell grows, stretches, and eventually becomes the fiber harvested from the boll. Which means researchers were trying to convince individual cotton fibers to manufacture color while they were still growing. In effect, they turned cotton fibers into tiny color factories. The result was pink fiber produced directly by the plant, not dyed afterward, not colored in a factory, colored while it was growing. That does not mean the dye industry is disappearing tomorrow, but it proves something important. The boundary between agriculture and manufacturing might not be as fixed as we thought. Ironically, creating pink cotton may not be the hardest part. The hardest part may be everything that comes after. Because white cotton has a hidden advantage. It keeps options open. A farmer can grow it without knowing what colors consumers will want next year. A textile company can wait to make color decisions. A clothing brand can respond to changing trends. White, cot- White cotton delays commitment. Colored cotton does the opposite. The moment the seed goes into the ground, somebody has already made a color decision. That's the contradiction at the center of this entire story. Colored cotton could simplify part of the textile system, but it could complicate parts of the agricultural system. The seed becomes a color choice. The planted acre becomes a fashion forecast. The field becomes part of the design process.